This is Koda Radio, episode 174 for October 12th, 2015. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Koda Radio, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show taking a pragmatic look at the art and business of software development and related technologies. This episode's brought to you by our two fine sponsors, DigitalOcean and Linux Academy. I'll tell you more about those great sponsors as this here show goes on. My name is Chris, but that doesn't matter because joining us every single week like a warrior is Mr. Michael Dominic. Hey there, Michael.
I'm here.
That's your warrior call?
I was actually going for something a little more Apache, but I just didn't get there.
Yeah. Now I'm not very familiar with Florida's geography. This is all new to me still. Do you have?
I am in New Jersey.
Oh, jeez, you were just. Hold on, I got it. To keep up with you, I got to open up a caffeine beverage here because.
I think we need to have a little app on a web server somewhere that's like, where in the world is Mike?
Yeah, where's Mike?
Tracking me down, Carmen Sandiego style.
How is this for you, moving back and forth like this? How's this going?
It is awesome.
Are you, when you say awesome, is that like the awesome like when I back my truck up into a fire hydrant kind of awesome? Or is that awesome like I just found this energy drink in the fridge awesome?
It's awesome like I lost a lot of weight. Is awesome, but I lost it from food poisoning.
Yeah, okay. Oh, good,
yeah.
good. I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, wow, okay. Well, so I'm glad you're here because we have a lot to talk about this week. And so I think, there would have been a slight Koda Radio revolt. I don't know what exactly that would look like. I think it would look like a lot of really polite people and students and graybeards that are writing VB and Cobalt getting together in some sort of support group and saying, yeah, I really wish they would have done a show.
Well, this is our weekly thing. In fact, I don't think there will be another show from me in Florida, actually.
No, really? Tell me about this.
I'm back at BTHQ full time.
That's a development. And are you... So you and I are just moving around like crazy, both of us. This is really interesting.
I basically took a 2-week vacation.
And decided that Florida wasn't working for you.
Yeah, that would be fair.
Yeah. And
there are hashtag reasons that aren't super relevant, but we could talk about them off air.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I follow you.
It's not really something that makes sense.
Yeah.
Given tech.
Yeah, there is that. It's funny. I really got a sense of that when I left Washington. I have been spoiled in the sense that I have grown up in the state that has Amazon, Microsoft, Boeing, Nintendo U.S. offices here, T-Mobile's U.S. offices are here. And so I have never really not lived in a place that wasn't like a tech central place, but because I didn't live in Silicon Valley area or California, I thought I was removed.
I kind of thought that way about New York, New Jersey, and wow, was I wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a topic for another day, but
No, I think this is actually...
Yeah, maybe it's good to go into. Let's just say mobile tech, it's infiltrated, and even just regular tech, right? Every business, everything or up here rather, is very... even the ones that are, they're so low tech, they're using ASP, whatever, from X years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I saw people doing POS systems on pen and paper.
Yeah, so
I saw all kinds of crazy crap.
Now I'm gonna just get my bias out of the way. I was going through Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, and South Dakota. So these are not known for tech central places, but I think what still struck me, what was just so striking, some of the places that we stayed at ended up not billing us by accident.
Yeah.
Now that we corrected the mistake for them, but they didn't bill us because, the gal was in on her regular day off, and she wrote it down on the piece of paper, but the gal that was supposed to be working that day had her piece of paper with her, and since the names didn't go on that list, they didn't know we were staying at their facility using their water, power, and sewer. And then we came back in just to say, okay, we're checking out. They're like, oh, we never even had you on here. No computers, nothing. No connectivity, nothing.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't quite that dark agey, but I did have a credit card swiped in the old carbon copy way.
Yeah. Although there were pockets of technology where I saw a fair amount of iPads in Square for people that were just like leaping up to credit cards. There was some of that, but the main issue I saw a lot is there's not very much connectivity, and for some networks there's zero coverage at all. There's like some cellular carriers I'm not very familiar with. So what I took away from that is there is a difference in the culture, and I don't mean to stereotype, but this is just sort of my first impressions, and I hope to broaden this as I take further road trips. But my first impressions were, because they are so far removed from it, there is sort of an inherent low value they assign it. Because they get along just fine without it, it's not really something that is all that necessary. And when it becomes something that's not all that necessary, you find that people are not willing to really invest in it. So an example I would see of this is, we have free Wi-Fi, and it was literally a Linksys router hanging from the ceiling at their shop. And what do you mean that's Wi-Fi? Yeah, if you just need to check your email or something, just walk over to the shack. It's fine. There's no problem with that. There's no value in, they don't recognize the value in the fact that people need connectivity, sort of everywhere. We need ubiquitous connectivity now. Not in their world. That's not something you need. And so when you come at it from that standpoint, I don't think you're willing to pay contractors as much money for services rendered or developers as much money for an application created. Is that your impression?
I didn't really do any kind of business down there per se. It was just interactions with people. I will say, when I told people what I did, a lot of people showed me their new phones, and it was 2 years old. I don't know why. I mean, obviously I can read, the statistics like anybody else. Incomes are significantly lower in certain states than others. But having said that, Florida also has Miami and Orlando and Tampa, which have a ton of money. I would say, in particular, the part I was at was very rural. Not anything against it. It was nice, good food. I love grits, but that's a topic for another day.
Yeah, beautiful often. Where I went was very beautiful.
Yeah, for a whole amalgamation of reasons, it was better to cut your losses than to try anything down there.
Yeah, I come back to me, and this is my first impressions, it was a cultural thing. It's not that, so you say, here's my new phone, right? Well, it's just, to them, that is a new phone, because by the cultural standard, it's by that cultural standard it is, and I'm not saying it's a bad cultural standard. They probably live better lives, so more power to them.
Yeah, I mean, people seem much more relaxed. I'll give them that, right? I mean, I would be careful about making any kind of statements of comparison, right? I wouldn't want to do that, but I would say that I'm just a little too up north, stressed out East Coast, probably to ever effectively adapt down there.
I was tempted. The time it hit me the strongest was we went into the Grand Tetons in Yellowstone, and I guess because it's a national preserve, they don't really allow companies to build cell towers in there. So there is no Wi-Fi, no internet, no cell towers. There's not even streetlights. And
wow.
There
were no streetlights on my street, and it was a dirt road.
Yeah, so, going around Yellowstone in the dark is I got lost. It's not a it's fun for the first 20 minutes, and then you realize you are in a very vast place. And
what got me was it's a half hour to the grocery store.
Oh boy, oh yeah. I am not kidding you. We had to bust out the paper maps.
Yeah.
To find our way back. But there was a implicit relaxation that came with it. It was very nice. People were very mellow. People seemed very relaxed, and it was very calm. And you could just sort of, just sort of feel that it was it was a place meant for relaxation.
Yeah, I will say one thing, right? Like as everybody listening to the show knows, I recently had some pretty severe medical problems, and I do have a customer who's very unhappy, or I've been right after the fact, like things are late, I'm not gonna, it's a problem. I think that's a very Northeast attitude. You know what I mean? Like, I can't imagine someone below the Mason-Dixon saying, "Oh, too bad, sorry, but we have commitments and blah blah blah." I think I will agree with you that in some way the mindset's a little better than it is here. But I think I'm already too far gone, right?
Interesting. I think I am too in some ways. If I'm going to be completely honest with you, the most stressful thing about my road trip was figuring out when I was going to have connectivity so I could work again. And essentially what it meant was we get somewhere, and if there wasn't solid connectivity, which was legitimately 80% of the places we went, it meant a clock started ticking in the back of my head. Well, we can only enjoy this for so long because it's going to take us, and these are massive distances, I'm talking 8-9 hour drives.
Right.
So that clock starts ticking in the back of your head, and you don't know exactly how long it's going to take. You don't know exactly where you're going to end up that has connectivity. And so it sort of prevented me from really enjoying it. And what I realized is, okay, now maybe instead of trying to force myself into an offline lifestyle, maybe I plan around building in connectivity and making sure everywhere I go has really good connectivity. Now, this particular trip, that wasn't the goal. But a future trip, then maybe and then I don't have to stress about work as much.
Don't you feel like you've kind of done that to yourself? Like, a great example is today. Like, I went out to lunch and I just got held up. I was talking to people. So, I'm not one of those I will sit with people and have my phone out the whole time kind of guy. In fact, I put my phone on Do Not Disturb.
Yeah. And that's actually one of my issues with the watch, is it sort of takes that from me.
But then I feel bad, and I have gotten some, not today, but in general, some fairly, for lack of a better term, nasty, right, voicemails and text messages when I was only unavailable for like 90 minutes.
Yeah, there were times on the trip where, I'm driving, right, for a lot of time, and I'm getting a lot of messages from production staff, and there's only certain windows of time where I'd have connectivity, and for the first few days, it was pretty stressful because I would look down at my phone and I would have 17 unread messages. Yeah, and a lot of them are questions that until I answer them, people don't move forward. And so then I felt very pressured to respond. And by the second half of the trip, by the last half of the trip, I should say, I had to sort of let go a little bit and be like, okay, first I'm going to stop driving. I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'm even going to eat a little bit. And then I'm going to read the 30 unread messages on Telegram. And that wasn't even getting to my email. It was really something.
Don't you feel like, it's a little different for you, right? Because you're only doing JB stuff. So everybody who's messaging you is probably, I know community members, or it's internal, or it's something like that, right?
Yeah, I have some family and friends on there too, but yeah.
Okay, but when you were contracting, like, I used to not mind, but I'm starting to get to the point where text message probably isn't an appropriate, or I don't feel like it's an appropriate way to communicate.
The issue with text messaging and Telegram is they're not state aware. They don't know where you're at in your workflow. And so if you could globally set Do Not Disturb, and I know phones have this, but that's not what I want. I just want to be able, like in Skype, you can say, Do Not Disturb. You can be online and say Do Not Disturb, and you can still receive messages, but it mutes your notifications and things like that.
See, that's interesting, but that's not even really what I'm getting at. I feel like people have an expectation when you text someone, you're going to get a quick reply. Mm-hmm. And I just...
Yeah, otherwise they'd be emailing you.
I don't like texting as a medium for any conversation that could be contentious.
Yes, I absolutely agree. I've learned that the hard way.
I am from New Jersey, and I'm Italian. You could possibly set, right? Like, I could misread, misunderstand, freak out.
Sure.
And in the past, many of my customers have been of the same disposition, and it leads to unnecessary conflict. But
also, if you have something even just a little bit, like if it's like feedback or criticism or anything like that, It's so much better received over the phone. People respond so much differently when they're talking to you versus reading. It's just huge difference.
And not even even an email though. It's like I feel like a lot of people have this. I'm texting you, so I need to get a reply in 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. Otherwise, they would use email. Yeah, that's the whole thing. Yeah. And
but it's just so rude to sit out with you. I mean, maybe I'm just an old man, and I think it's rude to sit in a meeting.
No, I am so glad you're saying this. And here's the other thing: is I irrevocably lose data when I get messages from my head. I am in the flow. I am working on, and come on, you know this when you're in the flow and you're working on something, and a message comes in, even if you have it muted, but the little thing slides up in the corner of your screen, the little notification slides up.
Makes me crazy.
Yeah, it's too late. It's too late. I have switched tracks, and the beautiful flow is gone. And then even when the message says no need to respond right now, it doesn't matter.
I've even become more mindful about how I use Slack or HipChat or any of those kind of services because, if the guy's not online, it's going to go to his phone.
See, I was specifically thinking maybe I should move a lot of stuff over to Slack for this and get it out of Telegram.
Well, I think the problem, with any of those services is you have to, I don't think, and maybe I'm whatever on this, most things you're going to tell someone, whether it's internal, external, don't need a reply right now. Right? Realistically.
They don't really need a K or got it, or especially the services that have red status, then they don't really, you don't need to respond with K. I got it. We got it.
Well, also there is a value in email in that it's, if you treat it like I do where email's supposed to be a letter, every time I don't do that, I have problems. Right? If I treat it like a letter, you won't sit down and write a rash letter usually.
Right.
You'll take time, and there's no expectation that you're going to get an email right back. And I just wonder, how much friction in life in general, for contracting, even employees, or even for you managing your own employees, could be avoided if, unless something's on fire, put it in an email, and let's make sure kind of quality over quantity, right?
Yeah, that's what, for me, email is not so good, and so that's why I was thinking maybe Slack or something like Slack. I don't know. This was probably the most stressful aspect of my trip was connectivity and then communications. And
Slack is inherently internal, though, right? an advertiser is not going to Slack you.
No, that's fine. That's what I was thinking. Is Telegram can be used for regular messaging, but the stuff that is questions and planning and content stuff seems like those could be ongoing threads in some sort of system. And you could see how you could start a thread for this Sunday or this Friday's Linux Action Show and just have Noah and I working out of it all week long. I don't know. It's an idea I've been playing with, but because the main issue I have is I want to be able to keep people moving forward, and I want them to be able to ask me questions that they need answered. But at the same time, because the work I'm doing is pretty important to the operation of the business, I need to not be constantly interrupted. And there are some days where I don't go 15 minutes without another message coming in. So if you think about that just breaks up my workflow too much. I can't even do Pomodoro, let alone that. So
well, that's the thing. I was doing Pomodoro for a while, and it broke down because iMessage or whatever didn't stop.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. So Rikai recommended Trello to me too, so I'm going to check that out as well.
Trello's not bad. I'm looking at I've been working a lot with Jira, so that
Slack seems to have the most adoption.
Well, it's a different Trello and Slack aren't really.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
But
gotcha. I'll have to.
I remember doing 90-day project plans for a feature, way when I was a young lad doing Java applets, and now it seems day turnarounds, 2 days, 3. Are we? Is there just an expectation of more? I don't know. I feel like sometimes more communication is bad communication.
Yeah, and I think the core issue you have here is the expectations that people are building around availability, because instant messaging is what it is. It's instant messaging. It's like the same. It's ICQ. It's AOL Instant Messenger. Only now everybody has it and they have it in their pocket. And a lot of us even have it on their desktop too. So it's like, since everybody has it, we've now set a new common set of expectations. And you know what? I think I play that role too. Like, sometimes I message certain people and I do expect a pretty fast response. That's why I'm messaging them.
No, I'm just as bad. I mean, it works both ways, but I sometimes feel like, if I get a hip chat on my phone or if I get a Slack or an iMessage, I assume it's urgent. And I don't think that's good, right? Like, if you wanted to say, hey, just checking in.
It's very stressful.
Like right. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, maybe it's, part of it is I definitely can see the other side of, well, no one's saying this is urgent. You're saying this is urgent. But then when you don't respond for an hour, you get like the 3 follow-up messages.
Yeah. Are you okay? What's going on?
Hey, are you there? Are you there? Are you there? Like,
you know what Noah and I have done, which is kind of an interesting solution. If you have 2 people who agree this is an issue, as Noah and I do, and you, is we have our regular Telegram, thread, which is how we, like, if we need a response from each other fairly quickly, that's what we use to message. Then we set up, he was his idea, a separate thread called Noah Rants, where we've both mutually turned off notifications on that thread. And that's for more like, hey, I'm thinking about this, or when you get a chance, can you grab this, or can you tell me about this when you have a minute? And those don't generate any notifications on any of our devices.
So it's like a gen chat, basically. It's like no notifications, but this is just for, non-pressing.
It's not flawless, though, because you still get the unread badge on the phone. You still get the unread count on the application, and that's still enough to, and you still get the message preview that pops up. That's enough that it's still distracting, but there's nothing vibrates, nothing dings. That's much better.
Like, I'll give you an example. I was going to hire, actually, a listener of the show as a subcontractor because, I took on a big job. I had medical issues, and then so I just wanted like some old customer things cleaned up. And I was at a wedding, and I turned my phone on silent. I forgot to send the guy the form, and he's now upset because he feels like I blew him off. Now, I feel bad about that. But would it have been appropriate for me to leave notifications on my mobile phone at my friend's wedding? Right? You see how that, and it was one of those things, can you help me out on a weekend? And the weekend's passed and it's over.
Yeah.
But,
yep.
like, I definitely feel like a jerk because I'm sure he made plans around it. And because I didn't get him the materials he needed and the paperwork, he couldn't do what I asked him to. So he's obviously unhappy.
What's really frustrating about that is there is when you are the key point, you're the key point of information there, and they can't proceed without you, but you need to be able to step away to do this thing, and they couldn't proceed without you. Like, it is this really frustrating thing because you only can really blame yourself, and it's like, well, I can't fire myself, I can't yell at myself, and yet I also can't do everything. So really,
you can yell at yourself in the mirror. I do it all the time.
I guess what I come down to is like, do I really just have to accept that every day there's a few things that are going to drop through the cracks, and you know what? Sometimes they're not trivial things either, but there's just so many things.
I felt really bad about this because I got a fairly annoyed, irate email from him, and like I got his point, and then of course I forgot to reply to the email. But I was flying out for a wedding out of state. It's like one of these things where, is the expectation that we're on call 24/7 now? Is that really what it's come to in the tech industry? That, because this was a Saturday.
Everything is so critical. You know what's funny? That culture we were just talking about towards the beginning of the show.
Right.
It is a little more mellow about this kind of stuff. This is the exact kind of thing they're avoiding.
And that's the difference. I mean, down there, your friend's wedding's obviously more important.
Mm-hmm. Of
course. Who gives a crap? So what? They're unhappy. Let them be unhappy. Like,
because they understand that a company can wait a day or two, and it's not actually going to be the end of the business. But when we're all spun up on how important all this stuff is, it does seem like the end of the world.
There's relationships, right? And there, things can get messy. I wonder if we're not, and not like us personally, but just like in general as an industry, are we not setting ourselves up for more pain and more failure by having these expectations that, not to harp on it, but really for a stupid Java applet, used to write 90-day plans, and a 90-day project had a quote 30 to 60-day overflow period, right? Minimum. And if anything changed, development stopped, and we went, remember big design up front? I mean, am I the only one who remembers this stuff? Where if anybody even mentioned a change, everything stopped. There's no such thing as, well, we'll talk about it later. It was just done. And no one cared if it was late, because it was late, but it had to be done right. And I don't know if this is just me hating agile people again, or, I feel like in our communications and the way we do things, we're overemphasizing, kind of over-communicating and massaging that, and under-emphasizing doing what we're supposed to be doing. Like, I'll give you in fact, I use this on somebody. Okay. Every time you ask, I used this last year. Every meeting you ask me to go to means I'm not working on your project. And just to be clear, if the meeting's 2 hours, I don't care. I don't work for the day because I have to travel for the meeting.
Yeah.
Right. So every meeting is a day.
It's funny because I've had a lot of headbutting about this. So basically for me, if I have 2 shows, that's an entire day. That takes up my entire day. And you know what, to be honest with you, I could spend 80% of my day on one show, because there's the stuff that you do before the show, there's the actual show, and there's quite a bit of stuff that happens after the show to make it go up on the web. And there is a lot to do there, and you fit in like maybe another phone call or doing a batch of emails, and that takes up my whole day. So when I'm doing like 2 shows, that is 100% a full day, and there's no room for meetings in there or anything like that. It is really, really tight, because you have to account for the spin up time, the travel time, sitting down, getting set up, get working. There's a lot of a lot of extra stuff there.
Yeah, there's, if you're meeting with multiple parties, is there a meeting and then a second meeting with it can be crazy. And I don't really have a point. And if you
it's just that, I guess my point is, if you out there have been in this argument before where you've said, if I have a meeting, this pretty much fills up my whole day, or if I have to do this and this, and people say, no, you have this, you can fit a couple little extra time in here, you can fit this meeting in there. That sense you have is right. Go with your gut feeling on that, because that is how much room you need to do your best at that thing that you're committing to that day. And if you need time around that thing to get in that air, to get your head in the right space or whatever it is, then that is totally legitimate. That's how you work, and you probably do a really good job at your job when you're in that space.
Right. Yeah, it's also one thing to have a call with like 1 or 2 people, but like a meeting with a ton of people can be draining.
Especially if you've never been there before, and you have to find the place,
or if you're me and you get lost every time you go somewhere new, and it takes 3 hours to get there.
And then you have to either figure out where you're going to park or whatever. It's just super frustrating. So let's take a break. Let's take a moment, and then we got some hoopla to get into this week. A couple of things, but first, I want to tell you about some of the exciting news from our friends over at Linux Academy. Now, Linux Academy has a great discount for our audience at linuxacademy.com/coders. You can go there to sign up and get the Koda Radio discount and support this show. And Linux Academy is a great platform for learning. They have self-paced courses with instructor help, over 1,800 courses, scenario-based labs. You get to choose the distro you want your stuff to be based around, 7+ of them. And then the labs automatically match that, and so does the courseware. The whole stack is available over there. Everything from Linux itself to the technology built around Linux and AWS, as well as Android and PHP, Ruby. And they have some really great stuff coming up. Now, they have a big show on October 15th where they're going to announce some major stuff. But sort of leading up to that, they just rolled out version 2 of their practice exams. Now, if you are a little bit like me and you kind of get up in your head when it comes time to take a test, this is a really cool system. So, of course, they still have their regular mode, which loads a preset of number of questions and a preset amount of time for you to take the exam. Like, for example, say you're going to take the AWS CSA Associates in regular mode, in a regular exam mode. It'll load 60 questions and give you 80 minutes to complete the exam, just like the real exam, just so that way you get used to the real exam. But now they've also introduced Practice Mode 2.0, where you get to select your time limit and the number of questions up to the maximum amount in the potential pool, and then take the practice exam. This helps you prepare in a different way, and it puts flexibility in the practice exam system based on your current needs. So here's a summary of the new features available with the practice exam. It'll display the total number of questions in your exam session. All practice exams are now timed. If time runs out, it'll automatically submit the questions you currently have for grading. Practice modes allow you to define the number of questions and time limit for an exam session. Question order is randomized each time a new practice exam is started, and answers associated with a question are also randomized each time a new practice exam is started. I think this is a really cool way to get confident with the exam, and that way you're not spending your time inefficiently, because you can go in there and tell it how much time you have available. That's really nice. And they have courseware that automatically generates based on how much time you have available as well. And when you log in, it gives you an estimation of how long each course is going to take. Like, for example, when I logged in and looked at, I think it was Python and Ruby, like one was 5 hours and one was 6 hours. And I thought, that is amazing. That is a great way to think about adding a new skill set. Something that look good on a resume or sound good in a review or help you get that job or really just challenge you. linuxacademy.com/coders. Lots of great features coming out over there. Some great video tutorials, downloadable comprehensive study guide, an entire system built by passionate folks who want to spread the good word. linuxacademy.com/coders. And a big thanks to Linux Academy for sponsoring the Koda radio program. So, Mr. Dominic, any quick thoughts on LogMeIn buying out LastPass? 'Cause that was a hit in the gut for me because I'm a huge fan of LastPass, but I'm not such a big fan of LogMeIn, having used them for years in IT. You know, I guess what struck me was the lesson, the lesson I'm taking away from the LogMeIn purchase, my lifelong lesson, is we always talk about companies going away and disappearing. You know, I wouldn't want to use LastPass because they might disappear, or I wouldn't want to use whatever because they might go away one day and then all my music will be gone. But more likely is that they get bought, and then a company with a completely different set of priorities takes over and takes in a different direction, which is what probably is going to happen here. And this is so much more likely than all the other scenarios. I don't know why we don't talk about this particular problem, is a lot of these developers are looking for somebody to pay for them to get out because they're struggling to make money. And so...
you can't make any money. I mean, sorry, I shouldn't laugh.
Right, well, that's the problem, though. That is the core problem. So a lot of them are up for grabs, more than we probably realize. I didn't think LogMeIn was up for grabs.
There's a whole methodology for startups to simply position yourself to be acquired.
Oh, for sure, but I don't know. Right. I don't necessarily think that was LogMeIn or LastPass's plan. I just think it became too attractive of an offer to say no. By the way, I didn't catch this until some post-analysis, but let's see. They don't quite say. Yeah, here we go. Once the deal is closed, they're going to pay $110 million in cash. LogMeIn is. But check this out, Mike. An additional $15 million in payments to equity holders and key employees of LastPass contingent on certain retention milestones in 2 years after the acquisition. Retention milestones, as in they knew that this was going to be a bad story for them. $15 million based on retention. That's a really interesting little hook.
So we're paying the employees not to leave.
I don't know.
That's what it sounds like to me. I mean,
that's what I'm thinking, but I'm thinking it's key staff,
but
key
isn't
management.
That common, right? Like, how many times in the 90s did Microsoft buy a company, and you know the standard thing was the Microsoft manager would come in and here's your offer if you want to stay. If not,
well, let me ask you this.
Sorry.
What if it isn't employees? What if it's user base?
Gonna pay users to stay.
No. The staff get bonuses if they make the service attractive enough to keep.
That's interesting. Mm-hmm, that's interesting.
Maybe that's what it is, because they're not very clear.
Right. That sounds crazy, but
I know, right? But I think a lot of people in our audience are bailing.
Well, I take it back, though. Comcast judges their customer service reps based on how many people they get not to quit services.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a big topic. I think this Friday's Linux Action Show is going to be about solid LastPass replacements and transitioning off of LastPass, because it seems to be big in our audience.
Why don't you do what I do? Just make everything password 1, 2, 3, 4.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. I don't know. To me, it just strikes me as it's a good reminder that these services can just up and go away. All right. So before we get into probably one of the bigger pieces of hoopla this week, I wanted to talk about something that has fallen off the radar of some of the other JB shows, and you were really kind of early in on this back in 100 episodes ago, really, when you were taking a look at designing for modern UI. And now here we are, about 100 episodes later, and we've been kind of waiting for this shoe to drop, I guess. This is the Microsoft Display Dock. You can connect a Lumia 950 or 950 XL to a display dock, and then you get an external monitor, keyboard, mouse, Office apps, and Outlook scale up to create a big screen optimized work environment. And it is...
Yeah, but there's a huge... You heard about the huge bug, right?
No, I don't know about it. No, this is, to me, I'm just looking into this.
Oh my God, huge bug.
What?
You have to have a Lumia.
Oh, but I'm...
Sorry. Misa make great joke.
Don't you think, though, that this is Ubuntu's convergence? This is kind of a big deal. Can't you picture the hipster CEO, technology guy that maybe instead of getting a MacBook Air or getting an iPhone, gets one really nice Lumia phone, and then he has one of these docks at home and one of these docks at work?
Not even, no.
Yeah, no. I kind of agree.
Yeah, no.
I don't,
I mean, it was an interesting idea when Canonical did it and nobody bought it, and it's going to be an interesting idea when Microsoft does it and nobody buys it.
You don't think so, huh?
No.
Yeah, I actually think these devices are just not powerful enough for that type of person. The person I just said has, 5 gigabytes of email in his inbox and 25 gigabytes in his other folders, and, these people are, they're a different kind of power
They're storage hogs, right? They're storage hogs. Yeah, they store everything, so you never know.
Well, it's something interesting to watch. All right, well then, so let's talk about the thing that probably is actually going to appeal to them, and that is the Surface Book. Now, this was announced since our last episode.
It's the laptop, and I heard your coverage of it, by the way.
Oh, you did, huh? What did you think? What is your impressions of the Surface Book? Did you see the live event where how they revealed the fact that it disconnects? I thought that was
fake out.
Yeah, that was kind of good. That guy was an interesting presenter. I think that was one of Microsoft. Yeah. So let's talk about the price, though. So if I was going to actually use this, I think I would want 512 gigabytes of storage and 16 gigs of RAM. That makes this thing $2,700.
My workhorse machine right now is i5, 8 gigabytes of RAM, and I'm looking right now, 256 hard drive.
See, now here's the thing, Mr. Dominic, is I have my main laptop that I tote around all the time is the Dell XPS 13 with Linux on it, and it's got
excellent choice.
It's got this mobile core i7, which is actually just a dual core with hyperthreading that gives me 4 cores. And I don't know why that's called an i7, but it is. And it's got an HD 5000 or 5200 graphics chip in it. And I just need more. It is not. It is sort of a bummer that one of my newest computers is not my fastest computer. It's not slow, but I can feel that it's not the fastest computer that I have. It's not a big deal, but it makes me not want to sit down and hook it up to a big display and do a whole bunch of work at it. It makes me want to just keep it as my mobile portable computer. And I am a little bit demanding, I suppose, but
yeah, I think you might be more than me. I'm doing fine power wise, but I keep I have 11 gigabytes of RAM on my hard drive. I keep running out of hard drive space.
Yeah, that is a big problem too. Yeah, because SSDs are expensive.
Yeah, and
especially the PCIe stuff, which this thing has.
So can I make a prediction?
Yeah.
I think we are going to see a renaissance in .NET development.
You have been saying that, and this would make a killer dev machine.
I think this is their MacBook Pro. This is everybody at the conference has one.
Have you seen the gap this thing has when it's closed? Have you seen that? It's got a real gap on this thing.
I know. I find it very attractive.
It's not bad, but I don't know. It's got a big fan down the side too in the i7.
Well, right, because it has to balance the weight, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's why that's like that.
Oh yeah, I know.
This is not a Gen 1 buy, but
here's the problem that I have with this. Here's where this thing falls apart for me. And I'm not just saying this to be a hater. I really think this is how the market feels. I don't think anybody that is making a conscious choice to buy a really expensive computer is going Windows unless they have to, or I guess I should say need to.
Oh, that's not even close to true.
Really? Who's picking this kind of computer?
There's Windows enthusiasts. We just don't know them.
They're called gamers. They're called gamers. And they would be buying a computer much more suitable for gaming. Even though this has a nice GPU, this isn't the computer you want for gaming. So I think I don't know who, I have yet, even though I live in Washington, I don't really know people who are extremely enthusiastic about Windows and want that hardware. Usually these people already have hardware they like. They like ThinkPads from Lenovo, or they like the HPs, or like Dells. Like if they like Windows at this point, then they like an OEM that makes Windows hardware too. And I don't see a lot of market room for this.
I don't know.
I think it's a good product. I just think it's too expensive.
No, I think you're wrong. I think we're going to see strong sales. I really do.
I don't know.
It's a little pricey.
Yeah, well, it's a lot pricey. To get 256 gig with 8 gigabytes of RAM, which honestly would not be enough for me, is $2,100.
All right, but this isn't too far off from Macland in terms of pricing, right?
Yeah, but okay, then I'm going to stop hating. But then here's the other thing that I just think it doesn't justify the price. So this thing has the 13.5-inch Pixel Sense touch display, which has a 3000 by 2000 resolution, right?
Okay.
There is a great amount of Windows 10 that isn't truly high DPI. You can scale up the UI, but it's a scaled up Windows.
Yeah, Windows has a terrible time at high DPI.
Yeah, and so this is a machine that comes with a very high cost and with an operating system that can't even fully take advantage of the display. I mean, it's kind of embarrassing in some ways. Like, could you imagine if Apple shipped a MacBook Pro Retina and the majority of, like, once you dropped out of, like, the dashboard or whatever, or what do they call their launch center thing? Launch center?
Expose or?
No, the little rocket thing that, has all the icons.
Launch, yeah.
Could you imagine if once you dropped out of that the rest of the OS was, like, just, like, zoomed up?
Well,
I don't think they would ever ship that product.
If you're using Launchpad, you have lots of problems, right? I mean,
my point is, though, it's like a UI that lays on top of the underlying UI, kind of like how the Metro apps can lay on top. They don't in Windows 10 now. You just have it there in the start menu. But sure, the start menu is going to be high DPI, and the modern apps are going to be high DPI. But the control panel and all the system settings and the registry editor and the MMC snap-ins, all of those are all low DPI. And you're paying, this is $2,100, and let's say 60% of your OS, and I think I'm being generous there. And I'm not even talking about all the apps you're going to run, Office and all of the standard Windows apps that are not very likely to be high DPI, which has got to be the majority of third-party apps. I don't really know. I'm just, when I tested Windows 10 on a high DPI display, I was shocked at how little supported high DPI. I look at that and I think
this is going to be a strong seller for them with the Windows enthusiast crowd, and I think they do exist.
Yeah, I think they'll sell a fair amount. I would be surprised though if they bust 300,000.
All right, you want to make a prediction?
Yeah, I do.
All right.
Let's see, by I don't know. See, it starts shipping October 26th. Let's say by end of year. What do you think?
Okay. End of year, 300K?
Yeah, I don't think they'll ship more than that. Well, the only thing that could throw that off is if they buy like Surface Books for like the entire company or something like that, and then they just, because they did that with the Lumia phones. Remember when they just they added 60,000 to their sales because they bought them for the staff?
Yeah.
So that's a little cheating. So with that caveat.
I love that move.
Yeah, that is good.
All right. So I'm here configuring a 13-inch MacBook Pro.
MacBook Pro.
2.9 gigahertz Pro.
Yeah. Now is this Retina?
Is it? Yeah, Retina.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right.
16 gigs of RAM, 1 terabyte
PCIe storage. Yeah.
Which I'm assuming means SSD.
Yeah.
Is 2.5, so 2,500.
And this is how much storage? Terabyte?
Terabyte.
And how much RAM? 16?
16.
So you can't even buy a config that high, spec that high on the Surface Book. The highest you can drop it down to 512.
They're charging you $500 for a terabyte.
Yeah, that's
if you go to 512, you're at $19.99, so you're at 2,000.
Yeah. So you're $100 less than the Surface Book with an operating system that supports high DPI, and I think is probably still more. Here's my caveat. I think a lot of people like Windows. A lot of people buy machines with Windows, and I think the majority of people that buy computers don't even know there's computers that you can buy that don't have Windows on them. They just think Windows is the computer. Okay, that's the majority of the market. People that are outside of that bubble, people that are being particular about the brand or the performance they buy, I think those are also people that go, I don't really need Windows unless they're gamers or they're writing Windows apps. I think this will sell to well-off developers, but there's a lot of developers that are struggling to make enough money to buy something that high end. And the other issue is,
and there's a lot of developers who are just running Macs because you have a workflow now, and
right.
Why change?
Well, and if you buy a Mac, you can develop apps for the web, iOS, and Android.
Yep.
And if you buy Windows, you can't really do iOS. And if you go Linux, well, then you can't really do iOS either. And for a lot of people, that's fine. To be honest, if I had spare cash, which I don't, I would, and I knew this thing could run Linux, I would be interested in buying it. I think it's a good piece of hardware. And I just don't need Windows. I don't need that much crap going on. I don't need Windows. So, I don't know. I'm actually talking to you on a machine loaded running KDE, and it also feels like it's a little too much.
Yeah, the problem is with these touchscreens, it inflates the cost of the machine.
There's that.
And I just don't care about touch.
Yeah.
Like, I'm using my laptop right now in clamshell mode hooked up to a Dell monitor.
I use the touchscreen a couple times a week. Sometimes I use it more, sometimes I use it less, but it's probably the least used feature on my thing. On my laptop.
Yeah.
Well, so email us. Go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact. And what are your thoughts on the Surface Book as a development tool, and also as just a standard machine to run as your daily driver? Is the Surface Book too much, or is it sometimes worth paying a premium price? There is maybe some advantage to having Microsoft be the OEM. And it's also likely they're going to stick with this for at least a few iterations. And I bet by the second or third iteration, it might, like the Surface 3 and 4, right, are really considered to be pretty decent now. The Xbox got pretty decent after they got through the 360 manufacturing issues. Usually, they spend the money to stick with it.
Their second-gen products are always really good.
The big question mark for me is Linux support. And I know that's ridiculous, but I'm just if the company really truly wants to be seen as, so Satya Nadella said this on stage, and this stuck with me. He says, we don't want people to need to use Windows. We want people to want to use Windows. Well, prove it. Make this laptop capable of running alternative operating systems. Really show the new Microsoft. Maybe I want to create Linux apps and run them on Azure, and I'd like to buy a Microsoft Surface Book to do that. That seems like if that's where Microsoft's truly where they're at now, that should be totally cool. We'll see. Hey, I want to tell you about something else that's totally cool. That's our next sponsor, DigitalOcean. Boy, is this a great way to spin up your own server up in the cloud right away. DigitalOcean is a simple cloud hosting provider dedicated to offering the most intuitive and easy way to get you going. And if you use our promo code CODERDIGITAL, that's one word, lowercase, you can get a $10 credit, and you support the show. You keep us on the air. That's how you can vote for Koda Radio to keep on going, is by using our sponsors' promos. And this not only helps you out by getting you a $10 credit, and trust me, once you play around with DigitalOcean, you're going to want to stick, but it also lets them know that you want us to stay on the air. The show's performing for them, and that makes them stick around. Koda Radio appreciates you using our sponsors, and we appreciate DigitalOcean sponsoring the show because we think it's a really good tie together. I've been able to use DigitalOcean now for quite a while, and I can tell you it's very, very easy to work into your workflow. If you're using it for production deployment, testing, any of that, it's very straightforward and easy to use. And here's the best part. Like, when you want to go start up a server, you can do that in less than 55 seconds. And for only $5 a month, you'll get 512 megabytes of RAM, a 20 gigabyte SSD, one CPU, and a terabyte of transfer. And they have data center locations in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, Amsterdam, London, Germany, and a brand new one up in Toronto. And their interface is really great. Really, really great. The best. And you can replicate the functionality of the interface on a larger scale with their very straightforward API. And what I love about DigitalOcean is they treat this interface and this API as platform features. They're very serious about them, and they iterate them very carefully and very smart. And they work with their community, and because of that, there's so much great code out there, open, ready for you to use to take advantage of that API that really makes integrating DigitalOcean into your workflow even easier. We're going to talk a little bit about automation later on in the show, and there is a lot of great ways to automate DigitalOcean using some of the most popular and common tools out there. Go use our promo code CODERDIGITAL, get a $10 credit, and try out their one-click application deployment. Get GitLab up and running in seconds. Go deploy CoreOS and try containerization out on the premier platform for containerization and Docker. DigitalOcean.com. Use the promo code CODERDIGITAL and go create something cool. I've been running OwnCloud up there for months, BitTorrent Sync up there for, I think, a year or more, probably more. It is really just a great system, and I've never felt like it hasn't been fast enough. I have I have a Quasal droplet that runs my IRC client all the time, 24/7, always available. It's been such a great service. DigitalOcean.com. Use the promo code CODERDigital. And a big thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the Koda Radio program. So, Mike, I don't know if you have anything else you wanted to cover, but we got an email in from John that I wanted to talk about a little bit because I think it represents an interesting portion of our audience. All right. Okay, I'm going to take that as a cue to go. Okay. So John writes in, and he says, "Hey Chris," he says, "I don't know if you checked this, but I listened to your latest Koda Radio, and you were talking about problems with installing and updating your systems, namely doing it manually. I thought I could remember we were talking about how the one listener wrote in and spent he said he was spending 20% of his time just managing all of his updates in his systems before he could actually sit down to develop. He says, I thought I could help you out by showing you how to automate it with Chef and Knife Solo. I can send you a video. We can talk it over on video call. It'll contain basic Ruby code and SSH in your machine and run a set of terminal commands to update what you want. He says, I've actually written a book on Chef automating Rails deployment at leanpub.com/deploy Rails blue book. And he says, send me an email if you want to try it out. So, John, I loved your question here about automation because we did kind of get into the woes we have of managing our systems and the problems around that. I wanted to take a second and talk about Chef because I think this is a tool that probably a lot of people in the Koda Radio audience know about. But if you are somebody that falls in the DevOps category or you're trending towards that and you are finding yourself with more and more systems to manage like our emailer last week, there are some solutions. I'm going to just play like a few seconds or whatever of their intro video so that way they can say it instead of me, and then we'll talk about this.
Hi, I'm Nathan Harvey, Technical Community Manager, and I'd like to introduce you to Chef. Chef is an automation platform that configures and manages your infrastructure, whether it's on-premise or in the cloud. You can use Chef to speed up application deployment and even create a continuous delivery pipeline. The key to Chef's power is that it turns infrastructure into code. Infrastructure as code means that your computing environment has some of the same attributes as your application. It's versionable, it's testable, and it's repeatable. Chef's unique approach gives you tremendous flexibility. You don't need to struggle to conform to Chef. Chef adapts to you and your environment.
So in other words, with your deploying applications and software, you can make sure that you can deploy an entire environment configured the way you want. And there's a couple of different systems out there that do different things. Alan has talked quite a bit about Puppet on TechSnap, and he's able to spin up a FreeBSD server essentially completely blank. It joins up in this Puppet system and then gets totally configured down to the host file all the way up to the application stack. And this is a really easy way for one person to manage software across a whole wide range of machines. And I was looking back at some of the tools that I use when I was really stuck down in Windows administration for a long time. I messed around with each iteration of the Windows Update service, and the big thing that I would run into with any of these automated systems is the developers really wanted to be in charge of the software stack on their machine because they had to be able to have predictability and build against certain versions and things like this. And so as soon as you hit that group of people, or another group that happened a lot too was our graphics departments, it completely fell apart. And then you would have these pockets of unmanaged systems out there. There weren't tools like Chef and Puppet that were approachable by people that weren't like lifelong sysadmins. Because back then, these systems required intricate configuration of group policy, intricate configuration of WSUS, how you structured your Active Directory and the organizational units within it, like very in-depth system administration stuff that was way beyond the purview of a developer who was focused on creating the web application that automatically logs in with a third-party system, right? It just wasn't on his radar at all. And so the tools that have developed now since that time honestly would put some of us out of work. I mean, the Chef stuff is really, really slick. And I was talking about in the DO spot, there are plugins for DigitalOcean that you just connected into your Chef installation or your Puppet installation, and you can just go deploy a system on DigitalOcean like if it's in your own data center. And I don't know, Mike, if you've had any time to play with any of these systems, because it's like you have to be at a certain large scale, or because if you do it too small scale, like 2, 3, 4, 5 systems, then you always have like this big system to manage just to manage those systems, and that can be just as much work. So it's like a fine line you have to walk. That's really my
it's never been really worth it for me to bother with that.
I don't really think it's worth it here in the studio either we have, a dozen plus systems or whatever it is, maybe more.
Right.
But it's still that even there isn't quite worth it. But if you are managing a whole bunch of VMs, 10, 15 VMs even, or if you need to be able to reproduce something over and over again, reproducible things, it's really good for that. So it's definitely worth checking out there if you haven't. And if you dig around in the TechSnap archive, you can find Alan talking about his Puppet installation, which he uses to manage Scale Engine at a global scale. So that's pretty cool. Mr. Dominic, is there anything else we want to cover in this week's shenanigans?
No, that's it for the shenanigans.
So I'll be able to say from the East Coast, New Jersey next week, probably. That sounds like that's probably a thing.
Probably.
Huh? Okay. All right.
Unless I play a trick on you.
Ooh, always keeping me guessing. I'm going to plug the subreddit, kodaradio.reddit.com. Go there and submit content for the show, feedback, all that kind of stuff. Cool projects you're working on, all that's welcome, kodaradio.reddit.com. Also, email the show. Go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact, send in some feedback, or join us live in the chat room, jblive.tv. We do this show Monday, noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, I think that is. You'd think I'd know by now. Over at jblive.tv and jblive.fm. Go find Mr. Dominic at Buccaneer Tech on Twitter and follow me at ChrisLAS. All right, everybody, thanks so much for tuning in this week's episode of Koda Radio, and we'll see you right back here next week.